Welcome everybody. This is Hugh Massie, the CEO and founder of DNA Behavior. And today I'm delighted and excited to be doing another Identity EQ interview. I've been finding all of these interviews really exciting because it's revealed something about the person I'm with that hasn't often come out before, and the ground that we've covered has been fantastic, and some of just the insights and stories that come out. And today I'm with a great storyteller, Joel Franks, who I first met 10 or 11 years ago in New York at a conference. He now lives partly between New York and North Carolina, and has started a financial literacy business called Finwizdom. Joel is all about behavioral finance, and is got his own podcast for behavioral finance and financial literacy as well. So, Joel, why don't you just tell me a little bit about your career history and how you've got to this place today of leading the financial literacy movement with behavioral finance.
Sure thing, Hugh, and thanks so much for having me here. I really appreciate this opportunity to tell my story and how it connects. First off, I'm going to talk about my career trajectory in terms of the perspective of finding one's purpose, and in a way that I hope that is entertaining, but hopefully everyone can reflect on their own paths. Because I believe one can find their own true passion and purpose by revealing the common threads of their own story and their own journey. So oddly enough, I don't think I've ever mentioned this, but oddly enough, my work career started in the toy industry as a teen, and I worked at various retailers, and I liked it. So when I went off to college, I studied marketing with the intent and desire to get into product development of toys. When I got my degree and I came out of college, it was one of those, America was in one of those economic cycles that were less favorable for employment. And the toy companies, which I learned, really wouldn't consider me for that kind of a role without an MBA, and I wasn't ready to go back to school. So after graduating, I went into the retail of the toy industry. And I worked with this British chain of toy stores, and they had a focus on educational toys. And the reason why I give this background is sometimes you have to go back this far. And if you follow your own threads, here I was mentioning how this chain was with educational toys. I didn't realize my purpose then, but educating others was inherently part of my DNA. So after a few years of doing this job, I still wanted to fulfill that role I was going for, and I was looking for a job with more study hours and hopefully a company that would help with reimbursement of some of the tuition. And this is when I stumbled into the financial industry. I found employment at a credit union, and I started as a customer service rep, a telephone rep, a teller, and I excelled. And then I became heavily involved with training others. Again, unbeknownst to me, but this underlying purpose of educating others. So I was there, and a few years later, I became the assistant to the marketing director and obtained my MBA. And I realized this really interesting component about this, Hugh, and that marketing financial products wasn't so different from marketing to temperamental kids in the toy industry, just now as marketing to bigger temperamental kids. And this was also when I recognized the value of behavioral economics before I even knew what behavioral economics really was about. So with MBA in hand, I took an entirely different extreme than where I was planning on, and I landed a role at a very large Wall Street firm. And so I went from marketing banking products to alternative investments. And I learned a very important lesson that resonated with behavioral economics there. And that's that the benefits of a product or services may be the same for all, but its appeal and its purpose varies, very depending on one's risk tolerance and their actual behavior. So again, my role grew, I was promoted, and then again, there's a reason why I tell this career story, because it kind of loops backward and forward a little bit. I got a call from the credit union that I once worked with, because I kept a very good network there. And there was a new president who wanted to take it in a new marketing direction. It was a lifetime opportunity. And the reason why I say that is that, you got to ask yourself something. When something like this happens, it's, how many times in your life do you get to go back to where you worked and get to do the things the way you wanted to do them? Very rewarding opportunity. And I enjoyed it. And then I took my chances at being an entrepreneur. And a vendor I worked with introduced me to some great opportunities to work as an independent consultant. And I started my own business. The problem was, and I'm going to have to be honest, I didn't exceed as well at that purpose. And you know why? Because it was missing that component about educating others. So it limited my endeavor. And that's the problem too sometimes in life, and why you need to reflect this thing, and also probably will lead to our conversation more about DNA behavior, because sometimes that's what happens, right? Who I was and what I was doing became misaligned.
Yeah.
So at that time, a tragedy happened. My sister was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. And I dedicated a lot of my time to her whenever she was hospitalized until she passed away. And this impacted my ability as an entrepreneur to build my business and my client base. But it also, made me realize the value of protection products, because my sister didn't have insurance. She was single. She had no kids. She had no mortgage. She didn't even have that much money. In fact, she had a little bit of debt. So she didn't think she had any need for insurance, but, her younger brother that you see before you today would have greatly benefited from it and kept my stay the course. So I woke up to the value of protection products.
Yeah.
And I went off to a Fortune 100 insurance firm. And that focused first on retirement initiatives, but there were retirement initiatives and annuities. And they had a reorg, and our smaller unit became this behavioral finance strategies department. It's also at the same time that I went back to get properly certified in this field through NYU. It was, you know what, Hugh, what's interesting about this time frame is it was a time when all those pieces were starting to come together. This holistic view of banking, of investing, of insurance. And it's also actually the time when you first mentioned in the introduction, I was blown away by your presentation around DNA behavior. I thought at the time, and still is, so ahead of its time in what it was trying to address. But to wrap up my story from there, I moved on to another financial insurance firm, another Fortune 100 firm. Very rewarding, but I always kept my door open. And I was passively looking, and I found a really great opportunity with a large organization that focused on retirement income. It's a $1 trillion company, and they were seeking a content development director. It was a very rewarding career. And it gave me a chance to combine the behavioral finance aspects to developing content to properly connect with both the advisors and the clients in the material. And it also helped me hone this personal value prop which is really to develop develop financial content that's relevant, engaging, and shareable. And then the pandemic hit, and that's where we are today. And as you've never seen before, this world is dealing with a great deal of these initiatives to address, from these inequalities associated with racism, gender, religion, ageism, and so much more. But there's this one overarching theme, and that's this growing wealth gap. So more recently, I left that corporate world, and Finwizdom, which you see above, is a place where I can facilitate stories through podcasting and through consulting in a way to help all walks of life improve their ability to manage their money. And really focus on financial literacy. If I have a moment, Hugh, I have a couple of quick statistics about financial literacy, which I find very compelling.
Why don't you share those? Because that would be interesting, I think.
So these numbers, there's different numbers out there, but these stats come from the National Foundation for Credit Counseling. And according to them, and I think this study was just done last year in 2020, and the pandemic may have had some of the impact of definitely has had an impact. But 62% of US adults are carrying credit card debt in the last 12 months. More than 1 in 4 admit that they do not pay all their bills on time. Nearly 6 in 10 find it difficult to minimize their debt, primarily due to unexpected financial emergencies or a reduction of income. Now, but here's the thing. So if somebody goes, well, not me, I've done a good way. I've scrolled away some money over time, and but I gotta tell you, you're far from being in the clear. The health of your investments are equally jeopardized by behavioral risks. And the other side of this too is when we hear this term financial literacy, it almost seems like education, right? We think about education, and right away our minds gravitate to younger cohorts, Gen Z and the younger millennials, or someone who's just challenged by debt load. But financial literacy is something we all need to strive to improve. So what I've done with Finwizdom is I'm creating, again, these topics, these stories intended to engage you for 20 minutes and leave you just a tad smarter than where you were before. I guess I call it edutainment. It's part of the edutainment. But Hugh, that's kind of my story and where we are today. And a lot of conversations that we've had around how pivotal your company and what DNA behavior does is so crucial to today's needs and today's Americans and today's citizens.
I love your story, and that's why I really enjoy doing these interviews, Joel, because to hear about your experience early on in the toy industry, and you had a passion and desire to do that, but to understand behavioral economics all those years ago in that industry and how that works for selling toys, and that, as you said, in a way, whether it's a toy or a financial product, they have the same features and benefits, but how they're heard, received, communicated, presented to different people will get a different reaction. And it's interesting when I reflect on that. My early career as a CPA, as a tax consultant, I before I ever really worked out human behavior as I know it today, I used to analyze the clients and figure out how I would present the tax reports to them. Some people, I would present 2-page summary. Others it would be a 100-page report. It was all the same stuff. It's just, some I would call up and go through it. Others I'd meet in person. I just intuitively figured out how to do it, and I made a little bit of a science of it. And I never realized that I was writing this down in a day journal for quite a few years. And when I set up my wealth management business, I was intuitively doing it. I didn't understand why I was doing it. I think that was a little bit like your start of the career. But the other thing I did as well, when I was working as a tax consultant, I ran all the training. I did all the training programs. So I loved being an educator. And so I think these things are deeply ingrained in us, and, in terms of our purpose. For me, it's helping people become self-empowered. You're wanting to help educate people to become more financially literate, because as your statistics show, Joel, we've got a massive problem in America, and people do want stories. And I think I love your term edutainment. So, if we bring this to the fore a little bit, what do you, how are you going to help in a nice way confront more Americans and probably people globally to see the problem, the financial problem that they don't really want to have to address, but in a way they've got to confront it to move forward?
So really
You've
good.
got some unique talents as a storyteller, as a creative person, that might help make that breakthrough.
The challenge is, I'm doing this more grassroots. I think it has to be a little bit more word of mouth, some promoting. Hopefully this will land on different types of platforms. Hopefully I'll have an opportunity to consult with others. But there's something we have to learn, and there's two things, and I think you've heard me say it before, but I'll say it for the audience. And number one is, when there's something we have to learn about behavior and finance. And I don't know, again, there's probably a lot of academia who may or may not approve of this. I know, and you hear it in the news and from financial firms about how to take the emotions out of your financial decision making. That's not the right question. It's how do you accommodate it? Because most economics itself is based on neoclassical economic theory, which is basically saying you have all the information, you know all the probabilities, and you know all your possible choices. That's just not real. Somewhere along the lines, you have to make shortcuts. That's the heuristics. That's your emotions. Every decision takes that. And here's the other part of this. And you said, how can you get people to do this? Well, even when changing someone's behavior is really hard to do. You may have heard this, but people try to do better for themselves, and they want to eat healthier. They want to exercise more. They want to stop their impulsive buying. They want to stay with New Year's resolutions. How well are we at sticking with those? So how best to do this is become part of a routine. And my approach is, and why I chose even podcasting, is in a way that we have to turn passive entertainment or passive stimuli into more active, interactive, engaging. And again, where DNA behavior comes into play, in a way that makes you realize these, and that's part of it. Some of this is just realization. And look, I got news for you. Even though I've got years behind this, doesn't mean I don't fall into the same behavioral traps as anyone else. it kills me even worse because I see it happening. I know it. I see when I'm doing it. But knowing and understanding why you're doing what you're doing with your money will help you also maybe hit the reset button every once in a while. Also be able to ask for help. That's a really hard thing. We were talking about credit union back then. Had a really great moment, and I'll try not to go off too much on a tangent, but when I was a customer service rep, this credit union dealt with very high level acumen people in the technology world, very smart executives. And I would be on the phone, and one of the things is I would see their statement on my screen. And my opportunity was, I see a lot of money sitting in their checking account and, want to promote a savings. And I would tell someone, today I can move a few $1,000s into this account and you can earn a higher level of interest. And they would say, great, that sounds like a great idea. And I said, well, do you want to put into our basic savings account or do you want to put it into a money market account? Hugh, can I tell you how many people didn't know the difference? They don't know what the difference was. And by asking that kind of question that way, people are very shy to admit that they don't understand how to manage their money. And I realized that was, again, the wrong question to be asking. I needed to change it in a way that helped explain it so they wouldn't feel dumb. And they should never feel dumb about their money, but it's always okay to ask those questions. So back to the original thing is, I'm going to keep on going with grassroots. I think it's something, as people learn about this, and as I have an opportunity to maybe even discuss this during events, maybe different types of recordings, hopefully we'll get the word out there. The more I can share these stories through other mediums and help support those firms who also have their own story to tell and have these tools, will be really helpful. And speaking of tools, Hugh, could I take a minute just to talk about the DNA behavioral assessment?
Yeah, I'd like you to talk about your reaction to it when you completed financial DNA, and you got your report back. And just for the audience, your facilitator style, and extremely creative. With that, empathetic. So just bring out a little bit more about what the report meant to you, Joel. That would be good.
I found it to be astonishing in terms of its accuracy. I mean, you gave away the punchline a little bit because of who I am, but earlier I mentioned in my story numerous times about that educating others is inherent in my DNA.
Yeah.
What's a testament to the DNA behavioral assessment is that accuracy. So when I recently answered 10 minutes worth of questions, and what does your tool tell me? Exactly what you said. I'm a facilitator. Can you believe that? I'm a facilitator. How else would you define what I'm doing for a living now with who I am behaviorally? That's a very impressive program.
Yeah, I think that the bringing you coming out as a facilitator, being extremely creative, but it does fit really well with education, which a lot of facilitators are, because they like to teach, and that's you. But I think what's wonderful about what you're bringing out and your message, Joel, also is educating people to get in touch with their emotions, to work with their emotions, that it's okay to have questions about money. You don't need to run away from it and be ashamed or anything. And in a way, your empathy in bringing out the stories and the relatable stories, I hope will encourage people to ask questions. We can together raise a lot more consciousness about the importance of this. But I think that's what this is doing. Is my feeling. So, if we take this to, what do you feel like is your standout talent? What's the key thing that you do better than everybody else in the world? Now that you know your financial DNA, that your background that's got education running through it, what do you feel that standout talent is?
I would say I'm a behavioral coach. And like I said earlier, I think I have a way of expressing situations or helping others in a way that's relevant, engaging, and shareable. I wouldn't say it's always about giving advice. I'm not even certified necessarily to give financial advice. What I will help you do is recognize why you do and what you do with your money, and making you feel good that that there's nothing wrong with you when things, the way you react, the way you feel. Those fears are normal. Those highs are normal. And just helping others get in touch with almost to what the problem was of what you're doing right now in your life and who you are, and connecting dots.
And do you see yourself, which I think this is important for identity, do you see yourself as a behavioral coach to many people or just to a few?
You know what? There's no limitation. I think it's just a matter of, do they want me to, will they let me be heard? Are they open to listening? So that's why I try to take this approach to storytelling and try to talk about these funny or humorous ways that your behaviors impact you beyond finances. So when I say behavioral coach, it's not necessarily about finances, just people help them with their career, with even their dating, in many ways. I would say my focus, which is a tagline, is creating wealth starts with financial health. And so this idea of facilitator and being a behavioral coach, I don't get a high out of, I don't have a need for power. It's need for achievement. I feel helping others is very rewarding in its way. And I think, again, that ties into the facilitator description.
Yeah, and I think the way I've experienced you today, and also just what I know and what you're doing, I think being an engaging behavioral coach to many people, which will happen through whether it's financial marketing programs, podcasts, there are lots of ways to get your voice, if you want to call it that, an inspiration to many people. And I think the edutainment techniques that you've got with engaging and empathetic storytelling is going to impact a lot of people, and I really see that happening, because I think you've got the rare gift, Joel, to connect emotions and rationality with stories to get people to take action, and that's where the change is going to come. So I think it is fantastic. So just as we wrap up, have you got any other tips that you would like to propose or suggest to our listeners?
I do. So many people may or may not be familiar with that old proverb that says that the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. And the question is, when is the next best time? And that's now, regardless of where you are in your life. So whether it's my podcast, leveraging tools and programs such as those from DNA Behavior, learn more about how your emotions impact your decisions, because they may help you improve your ability to manage your money.
yeah, I think that's a great end, and for everybody, just start doing that now. That's what we're all about. That's what Finwizdom is about. So thank you, Joel, for spending time with me today. I think this has been fantastic, and I know we're going to impact many people in the future with this kind of edutainment.
Thanks, Hugh, so much for having me here and letting me share my story and be part of your world.